I had barely stepped into the Grand Hotel lobby when a sentence stopped me in my tracks. "Well, look at that. The maintenance guy finally arrived." The words weren't spoken directly to me. They weren't meant for me officially, but they were spoken just loud enough that I could hear them, and just quiet enough for the speaker to pretend otherwise. A few people nearby chuckled. My feet locked where I stood. I glanced down at myself. Freshly pressed shirt. Shoes I had spent half the morning polishing. Everything neat. Everything respectable. Yet in that instant, at 64 years of age, I felt like a man who had wandered into a place where he was never supposed to belong. What made the sting worse was knowing exactly who had said it. The woman who had just reduced me to a joke was about to become my son's future mother-in-law. And judging by the expressions around her, she wasn't alone in what she thought. For a second, I considered leaving. In fact, one foot had already begun turning toward the entrance behind me. Then my son appeared. He moved through the crowd, came directly to my side, leaned close, and whispered only 4 words. "Dad, trust me tonight." That was all. No explanation. No details. Just those words and a look in his eyes, unlike anything I had ever seen before. At that moment, I had absolutely no idea what was coming. Neither did any of the people standing in that room. My name is Rajveer Singh. Most people simply call me Raj. I am 64 years old, and I live on 30 acres of farmland outside Conroe in Haryana. The land sits far enough from the city that the noise fades away, and the mornings still belong to birds, tractors, and the wind moving through the fields. I was born there. My father worked that soil before I ever touched it. He spent his weekdays repairing agricultural machinery and his evenings tending crops and livestock. The first time I followed him into the fields, I was barely tall enough to reach his shoulder. By 18, I was working full-time. For more than 2 decades, I handled equipment maintenance for large agricultural operations across northern India. When I finally retired, I returned permanently to the family land. A few wheat fields, some vegetables, several dairy animals, and a small orchard that never seems to cooperate no matter how much attention I give it. Nothing flashy, nothing impressive to strangers. But everything there was earned honestly. Every boundary stone, every fence post, every tree, the kind of wealth that remains in your hands instead of your bank account. My palms have carried calluses for so many years that I hardly notice them anymore. My wife Mira used to notice them. She was the sort of woman people spend their whole lives searching for, and rarely find. Calm, intelligent, patient, and frighteningly accurate when judging character. She would spend 10 minutes with someone and somehow understand things about them that took everyone else years to learn. Together we raised 2 children. My daughter Ananya is 31 now. She married a schoolteacher named Rohit. They live in Chandigarh with their young son Arav, a boy capable of turning even the worst day into something worth smiling about. Then there is my son Arjun, 33 years old, an agricultural and civil engineer who earned his degree through scholarship and hard work. Watching him graduate remains one of the proudest moments of my life. Only one moment ranks higher, the day he was born. And another memory sits close behind it. Standing beside Mira's hospital bed, holding her hand, listening as she smiled weakly and told me, "The children are going to be fine, Raj." 2 days later she was gone. Heart failure. Fast. Cruel. Final. 5 years have passed since then. Some mornings I still wake expecting to hear her voice. Grief becomes quieter with time, but it never truly leaves. After Mira passed away, Arjun and I grew closer. Every weekend he drove out to the farm. We worked together during the mornings, shared lunch on the veranda, talked for hours while the evening sun disappeared behind the fields. He had built a successful career advising agricultural businesses on irrigation systems and land management projects throughout North India. The salary was excellent. The future looked secure. But what mattered most was that he never forgot where he came from. He remained present. He remained grounded. Most importantly, he remained my son. Around 20 months ago, he introduced us to someone. Her name was Naina Kapoor. She came from Gurugram. Old money, corporate money, the kind that doesn't constantly advertise itself because it assumes everyone already knows. Her father, Vikram Kapoor, controlled multiple commercial real estate investments. Her mother, Shalini Kapoor, moved comfortably through charity galas, business circles, and social events where appearances mattered more than substance. The first time Naina visited our farm, she behaved perfectly. She smiled, she complimented the food, she thanked everyone politely. On the surface, there wasn't a single flaw. But Naina had taught me something years earlier. Watch people's eyes, Raj. Smiles are easy. Eyes tell the truth. And Naina's eyes bothered me. Whenever they landed on me, I noticed something familiar. A silent evaluation, a careful assessment. She observed the kitchen, the furniture, the tools hanging in the workshop, my hands, my clothes, everything. She never said anything disrespectful, not once, yet I constantly felt as though she was measuring me against some invisible standard, and somehow I wasn't meeting it. For months I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was simply being protective. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was struggling to let go, so I ignored the feeling. For nearly a year and a half. Then there were her parents, Vikram and Shalini Kapoor, had a unique ability. Whenever they entered a room, everyone else suddenly seemed smaller. I visited their home in Gurugram once. Massive property, luxury vehicles, private staff, imported decor. The sort of place that looked more like a luxury resort than a residence. Vikram shook my hand the way people handle paperwork. Not warmly, not coldly, just as an obligation. Shalini asked questions about farming with a smile that never reached her eyes. The conversation sounded polite, but underneath it sat a quiet layer of pity. She spoke about my life as though it were a charming little hobby. I recognized the condescension even if she dressed it in expensive language. Still, Arjun was happy, so I stayed silent. Because parents sometimes accept discomfort when their children are in love. Eventually the engagement celebration arrived. A luxury hotel in Delhi. More than 50 guests, business associates, relatives, friends, people from worlds that rarely overlap. I arrived slightly late after dealing with problems at the farm. The drive had taken longer than expected. Still, I had prepared carefully. My clothes were spotless. My shoes shined. I had done everything possible to present myself with dignity. Then I walked through those doors and heard her, Nina's voice, speaking casually to her mother. "Oh good, the maintenance worker finally got here." I cannot tell you exactly how many people heard it. Enough. Enough to make the air change. Enough to make several faces turn away. Enough to create that uncomfortable silence people use when they know something wrong has happened, but do not wish to acknowledge it. I wanted to leave. I truly did. One hand had already started moving toward the exit. And suddenly all 64 years of life felt irrelevant. That is the strange thing about humiliation. It ignores age, it ignores experience, it ignores achievement. For one painful moment it reduces you to the smallest version of yourself, and asks whether you still have the courage to remain standing. Then Arjun appeared. "Dad, trust me tonight." So I stayed. The evening continued. I sat with several of Arjun's colleagues. Good people, people who asked sincere questions and listened to the answers, people who treated me with respect. Yet every so often my eyes drifted toward the main table, toward Nina, toward her parents, toward Vikram Kapoor, and every time our eyes met, he wore the same expression, the look of a man who had already decided exactly what you were worth, and believed there was nothing left to learn. After most guests had gone home, Arjun approached me quietly. "Dad, come with me." We walked out to the parking area and sat inside his vehicle. He closed the doors. For several moments he said nothing. Then he looked down at his phone. "Dad, I need you to hear something, but let me finish before you react." He opened a folder. Audio recordings, dozens of them, each marked with a different date. Before I could ask a question, he pressed play, and the moment that recording began, everything changed. The voice that came through the speaker belonged to Nina, but it wasn't the version of Nina I had spent 18 months watching. There was no practiced warmth, no careful politeness, no gentle smile, only confidence. Cold, relaxed confidence. "Just a few more weeks, Mom. Once the wedding happens, everything starts moving." Her mother's voice followed. "And the land?" Nina laughed softly. "Dad already has people interested. Arjun won't question anything, and his father certainly won't." I felt my stomach tighten. The recording continued. "Men like him trust family. That's exactly why this will work." For several seconds I couldn't speak. The words echoed through the vehicle while my mind struggled to catch up. Then Arjun opened another file, and another, and another. Each recording pulled away another layer of the illusion. The 30 acres they discussed were my 30 acres. The land my father had worked. The land my grandfather had protected. The land carrying 3 generations of sacrifice. Months earlier, local authorities had quietly approved plans for a major transportation corridor near the region. Most people didn't know about it. Developers did. Investors did. And Vikram Kapoor certainly did. According to the conversations Arjun had uncovered, The future value of that property would increase dramatically once public announcements were made. The Kapoors had calculated everything, every step, every timeline, every opportunity, and somewhere along the way, Arjun's engagement had become part of their strategy. There were videos, documents, photographs, evidence collected carefully over weeks. Arjun had visited their home repeatedly while pretending everything was normal. During those visits, he documented conversations, photographed paperwork, and preserved records. He discovered draft agreements, projected profit estimates, correspondence with potential buyers, even documents carrying my forged signature. At first, I refused to believe what I was seeing. Then I saw the evidence, again, and again, and again. The truth became impossible to deny. My name had been placed on papers I had never seen. Signatures had been copied. Documents had been prepared as though ownership transfer was already inevitable. The entire operation had been mapped out long before the wedding date was announced. I sat silently in the darkness. The phone felt unusually heavy in my hands. Everything I thought I understood about the previous 18 months rearranged itself. Finally, I looked at my son. "What are you going to do?" he told me. And if I'm being honest, part of me resisted immediately. I come from a generation that solves problems quietly. My father always believed family matters should remain private. No scenes, no public battles, no unnecessary spectacle. Part of me wanted to cancel the wedding quietly, protect the property, walk away, let the relationship die without drawing attention. But then I remembered the recording, the amusement in Nina's voice, the way she discussed my life's work like a future transaction. I remembered the engagement dinner, the comment in the lobby, the years invested in that land, the memory of Mira, and something she used to tell me whenever I considered swallowing an uncomfortable truth. "Let the truth breathe, Raj." So I nodded. "I'm with you." The next morning, Arjun introduced me to one of his friends, a professional audiovisual technician named Karan. Together they had already built a plan. The wedding venue had approved a presentation system. Officially, it was supposed to display photographs and memories of the couple. Unofficially, it would reveal something very different. Karan showed us the presentation, the recordings, the subtitles, the supporting documents, everything organized with precision, everything impossible to misunderstand. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room. I wore the same suit I had worn at my daughter's wedding years earlier. For a long time, I stared at my reflection. I thought about Mira. I thought about my father. I thought about generations of hard work buried inside that soil. And eventually, a strange calm settled over me. Not anger, not excitement, just certainty. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock the following afternoon. I arrived early. Guests filled the hall slowly. The Kapoor family entered first. Vikram walked confidently through the crowd. Shalini followed beside him. Behind them came relatives, business contacts, and friends. An entire display of status and influence. Arjun stood near the front. To everyone else he appeared nervous. A groom waiting for his bride. But I knew my son. I could read him from across a field. His jaw was steady. His posture was firm. He was ready. Then the music began. Naina appeared. Her wedding gown looked expensive enough to purchase farmland. She moved gracefully down the aisle on her father's arm. Every eye in the room followed her. Every eye except mine. I was watching Arjun, and I saw something there. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Resolution. Vikram handed his daughter over. The smile on his face carried the satisfaction of a man convinced the deal was already complete. He returned to his seat. The officiant welcomed everyone. The ceremony progressed. Then came the moment. "Arjun Singh, do you take Naina Kapoor to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Arjun raised one hand. Before answering, he spoke. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every person in that hall heard him clearly. "Before I respond, there is something everyone here deserves to see." The room froze. Naina's smile vanished instantly, and at the back of the hall, the giant screen illuminated. Confusion appeared first. People turned around. Whispers spread. Then a video appeared. Naina's face. Naina's voice. And suddenly confusion became recognition. The recording played. "Once we're married, I start handling the land situation." Her mother's voice followed. "What if his father refuses?" Naina laughed. "Men like him trust their sons completely." The silence that followed was unlike anything I have ever experienced. Not ordinary silence. The kind that occurs when an entire room reaches the same realization at exactly the same moment. I wasn't watching the screen. I already knew what was on it. I watched the guests. A woman covered her mouth. Several people stood. Others stared in disbelief. Shalini Kapoor lost all color. Vikram shot to his feet. "Turn that off. That's manipulated." The recording continued. Then came another, and another. This time Vikram himself appeared, discussing future profits, discussing land values, discussing acquisition plans, discussing paperwork. The room changed completely. People began leaving their seats. Some moved toward the exits. Others remained frozen. A third recording followed, one captured shortly after the engagement celebration. Naina complaining about pretending to respect me, Shalini laughing, both of them discussing how little longer they would need to keep up appearances. That was the moment everything collapsed. Naina began crying. Fast. Desperate. Panicked. Those recordings are edited. She turned toward Arjun. Tell them. But Arjun never looked away. Every word had already been verified. Every recording authenticated. Every document examined. He explained it calmly, methodically, without anger, without drama. Just facts. Facts are powerful when they stand alone. Vikram rushed toward the technical booth. Karan calmly locked the door. The presentation continued. Forged signatures, property projections, correspondence, dates, names, evidence. Piece after piece. Then something happened none of us expected. A man stood from the audience. Middle-aged, well-dressed, composed. He introduced himself calmly. An assistant public prosecutor. A long-time acquaintance of the Kapoor family. After reviewing what had been presented, he publicly advised them not to leave the venue. The atmosphere changed instantly. The confidence vanished from their faces. For the first time, reality had entered the room. Naina collapsed into a chair. Shalini cried openly. Vikram continued arguing. But the argument no longer mattered. The evidence spoke louder. And for the first time in nearly 2 years, the weight I'd been carrying disappeared. The judgment, the humiliation, the doubt, the feeling of never quite belonging, all of it lifted. The truth had finally caught up. Police arrived shortly afterward. The Kapoor family was escorted away. Some guests recorded everything. Others stood in stunned silence. Several relatives approached Arjun to apologize for things they genuinely hadn't known. The ceremony ended. The officiant left. The music remained waiting. The food remained prepared. The hall remained reserved. Arjun eventually found me standing near the back. For a while we simply stood together. Then he smiled faintly. "The food is already paid for, Dad." I looked around. Our family was still there. My daughter, my son-in-law, friends who had stayed, people who genuinely cared. Arjun looked around the room. I'd rather celebrate truth than mourn a lie. And so we did. We ate, we talked, we laughed, we danced. At one point Ananya held my face and whispered something that nearly broke me. "Mama would be proud of both of you." I looked away for a moment because there was no defense against those words. In the weeks that followed, investigators built their case carefully. Every recording was authenticated. Every document examined. The deeper authorities looked, the more they discovered. The image the Kapoor family had spent years presenting wasn't real. Debt hid beneath luxury. Financial pressure hid beneath status. Appearances hid desperation. The scheme involving our land wasn't their first attempt. Other people eventually came forward. Similar experiences, similar patterns, similar manipulation. One witness after another strengthened the case. Before trial, settlement offers arrived. Large amounts of money, public apologies, requests to drop charges. Arjun and I discussed them briefly. Then we declined. Not because we were wealthy, we weren't. Not because the money wasn't tempting, it was. But some things cannot be measured financially. Truth was one of them. Accountability was another. The trial lasted weeks. Defense attorneys argued aggressively. But evidence remained evidence. Certified recordings remained certified recordings. Forged documents remained forged documents. Witness testimony remained witness testimony. Eventually the verdict arrived. Guilty, on every major charge. Months later, life finally became quiet again. Arjun returned frequently to the farm, not because he had nowhere else to go, because he chose to. He eventually met someone new, a soil scientist named Kavya. Practical, kind, authentic. The type of person who cared more about character than status. The first time she visited our farm, she wore work boots and spent half the afternoon discussing crops. Not once did she make me feel out of place. Not once did she look down on where we came from. 2 years later they married beneath the trees on our land. No grand ballroom, No performance. Just family, friends, and people who genuinely loved one another. It was the happiest day I had experienced since losing Mira. And if there is one lesson I carried away from everything that happened, it is this. People who work hardest to make you feel small are often terrified of what you represent. Nana never called me a maintenance worker because she believed it. She said it because she needed to. Making me smaller made her choices easier to justify. The mistake many people make when facing that kind of disrespect is believing they somehow earned it. You didn't. There was never anything wrong with you. The problem belonged to the person doing the judging. What Arjun understood before anyone else did was simple. Truth doesn't require permission. It doesn't need the perfect audience. It doesn't need ideal timing. It only needs someone brave enough to let it be heard. And before I leave you with this story, I want you to consider one question. Is there a place in your life where you've been shrinking yourself just to keep someone else comfortable? And if there is, how much longer are you willing to keep doing it? I'm 64 years old. I still wake before sunrise. I still work the land. I still carry calluses on my hands. And every night I sleep peacefully because I have nothing to hide. In the end, that was the only inheritance I ever hoped to leave behind. Integrity, truth, and the courage to stand tall when someone else wants you to kneel. This story is a fictional narrative inspired by real emotions and human experiences. Any resemblance to actual persons, events, or places is purely coincidental.